The most interesting and newsworthy television show of the year is coming here to TCN. We are not bragging. That's actually true.
The president's been shot. I repeat, the president's been shot.
So our longtime producer, Justin Wells, and a team have been embedded, with no publicity at all, with Donald Trump on the campaign trail for months. They're the only crew capturing what is going on the campaign in real time, intimately. They're with Trump as he campaigns for the presidency across the country, and they've shot some amazing footage. It shows you what it's really like in there. So if you're a member, you will soon be able to get this docu-series covering the historic campaign, the fall of Joe Biden, never-before-seen footage from the assassination attempt at the Butler Township, Pennsylvania Trump rally, and a lot more. It's going to pull back the curtain completely. They are embedded inside the campaign. I can't wait to see it personally. But to get it first, go to tuckercarlson.com, become a member. The greatest television event of the year, and we're proud to offer it. This is one of those rooms where, in fact, this is not just one of those rooms. This is one of those states where I really feel like if I knew every person in here, I would like every person in here. I really feel that way. I evaluate people on the basis of my olfactory senses. I really try to be as close to my dogs as I possibly can. And my dogs know instantly whether you're someone they want to have dinner with, and I'm just getting a very strong aroma of good people. So thank you. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. By last night's debate. And I know everyone has a different experience. I'm sure everyone watched, or many people watched, but I woke up thinking just one thing. Kamala Harris has a gun? What? How can that be allowed? And by the way, why is that not the headline on every paper in the world, internationally, from Frankfurt to Tokyo? I mean, Kamala Harris has a gun. And I'm about as pro-gun as anybody could be. I carry a gun. I've hunted and shot my entire life. I hunt with my dogs. I could not be more pro-gun. In fact, I'm so pro-gun I don't even talk about it because it makes me too emotional. I don't think Kamala Harris should have a gun. And she's the only person I've ever said that about. I just don't think she should. I don't believe in red flag laws. I think we can make an exception for her. A gun? Really? No. And is anyone gonna ask what kind of gun and why she has it? She has no idea what side the bullet comes out of, like none. I'd love to watch her assess it. I spend an inordinate amount of time watching gun videos on YouTube, you know, like Hickok 45ers, gun reviews or whatever. I can just imagine Kamala Harris being like, So that was my main thought about last night's debate. I had a lot of other thoughts too, some of them quite dark, and so dark that I was pondering it in the shower today. And I want to tell you what I thought, because I actually felt like I came to some important conclusions. You can judge for yourselves. And then I'll stop and we'll get to the meat of the show with Dan Bongino, who's such a wonderful person who's here. I'm really honored to have Dan Bongino here. By the way, I was at lunch today downtown. You have some amazing restaurants in Tulsa, and I ran into two great people from Beverly, Massachusetts. What nice people. And, oh, there they are right there. And by the way, Tulsa is such a nice town that she goes, I want a picture. Oh, I left my phone in the Uber. And all of a sudden the Uber pulls up and this woman's like, you left your phone in the Uber, here it is. And I thought, what other city, no city I've lived in would any Uber driver say anything other than, oh, a new phone, awesome. Go Tulsa. But anyway, they're like, oh, we're so glad to meet you, but we really came to see Dan Bongino. And I was like, yes, Dan Bongino. I love that. Anyway, here's what I thought. So I'm watching last night, and I thought to myself a couple of things. One, and I've made fun of Kamala Harris since Kamala Harris was dating Montel Williams. I mean, there's really nobody. I'm a kind of an OG Kamala Harris mocker. I've had more fun making fun of Kamala Harris. I will never stop. I don't care if she becomes emperor of the universe. I will make fun of her. I will call her Montel Williams' side piece. I will play the school bus video. Like, I will never stop making fun of Kamala Harris because it brings me such deep joy. And I think we should do that. It's a sign of life when we can laugh at someone like Kamala Harris, and she's inherently ridiculous. She's not sinister and creepy like the guy she's running with. I can't even laugh about that guy. Woo! Not babysitting in my house. But, sorry, Tim Walz, I know you want to. You can't. But watching Kamala Harris last night actually made the hair on my arms go up because I realized something that I had felt before, which is that she has no limits at all. At all. This woman has no limits whatsoever. This is someone who is clearly not a person of faith, doesn't think God is watching, thinks she is God, has no kids, so doesn't care about, the future in the way that people who have descendants, I'm just being honest, do care, and feels like she can do anything, actually, and would do anything. And I thought, man, I'm glad I'm not someone she hates because I could, oh wait. Because if I'm being totally honest, she didn't seem like a buffoon last night at all. She seemed like someone with a mission. The mission is to take power. The process for taking power is memorizing a series of lines fed to her by her friends in Hollywood. She did it. She's dutiful. She's hardworking. And she's scary, absolutely scary as hell. And she has a long track record of putting people she doesn't like in prison. As one of those people, it gave me pause. And so I had a couple of quick thoughts, like, can I go anywhere? No, I'm American. I'm not going anywhere. I'm 55. I will die here, buried with my ancestors. I'm not going anywhere. So I'm staying. And I mean that. I mean that, especially, I don't know how much time you spend around rich people, but there is this kind of conversation that you hear if you're around rich people, which is like, well, I'm going to so-and-so, I'm going to so-and-so. And it's like, no, actually, there's something about burning your boats, and my ancestors burned their boats hundreds of years ago, actually, here, so like I literally am tied to this country as deeply as anybody can be, but that's the right mindset. No, it's my country, actually, and you're not allowed to come in and just take it over. You know what I mean? And send in new voters from around the world to like eat my cat and get you elected. No, I'm not doing that. By the way, the spirit of hilarious resistance lives on the internet. If you haven't looked up cat memes in the last 24 hours, treat yourself. It's like no matter how dark it gets, there will always be somebody on Twitter who's just like a brilliant person, who comes up with an even funnier Save Our Cats meme. Anyway, but I thought, no, I'm not going anywhere. And I thought, this woman actually scares me for the first time. It was funny to make fun of her when she was this person who no one has ever voted for or ever liked. She has no fans anywhere. And for those of us who grew up in a system based on the idea that, in order to wield power, you have to have the consent of the governed. Do you remember that? That was actually the idea the country was founded on. That government has no legitimacy apart from the approval of citizens, period, because we own the country and they don't. Kamala Harris does not own the country. The people who work for Kamala Harris do not own the country. Federal bureaucrats don't own the country. The mayor of your town doesn't own the country. Anybody who works for the government works for you because you own the country, period. And kind of like any other job, you serve at the pleasure of the employer, as I found out personally a year and a half ago. And that's all right. I wasn't mad about it. That's fair. That seemed fair to me. The person who owns it gets to decide who works there, right? So, that's just the most basic arrangement in the world. If you catch your housekeeper stealing, she doesn't get to lecture you, right? You get to fire her because you're her employer. And our government servants, or they're our servants. They belong to us because this country belongs to us, period. And so I've never really been afraid of any politician in my life because why would you be in your own country? It's my country. If I do something wrong and you can prove it, then put me away. That seems fair to me. But you can't just hurt me because you don't like my politics or because I criticize you or because I point out that you're incompetent, greedy, and dishonest. That's not allowed. You can't put me in jail for pointing out that your friends killed Jeffrey Epstein. Sorry, you're the criminal, not me. Right? So there's really never been a time where I felt like, ooh, this is scary. And it made me mad, really mad, really mad. Actually, enraged me. And it was only after getting a text from one of my many children who was like, I think Trump did a great job and Kamala's an idiot and everything's gonna be fine, that I calmed down a little bit. And she may be right, I hope so. But I did think, like, what are the perils to me, to all of us, in a moment like this? And it's probably not going to jail. I mean, there are just too many, 350 million people. Like, we don't have the capacity to throw all the thought criminals in prison. We could throw some, but not all. Most of us are not going to jail. The real threat, actually, is a much deeper threat to ourselves. So I have noticed for the past, say, 10 years, I've been in roughly this business for almost 35 years. It's really accelerated in the last 10 years, where everyone who disagrees with the people in power is a bad person, is some species of hater. It's not just that you're wrong about tax rates or even gun control or abortion. It's that you hate women, or you're a racist, or you're some species of bigot. You're morally impaired. And of course, the irony is that in general, the people they call those names are the best people in America, actually. They're the most likely to help their neighbors, no matter what their neighbors look like. They're the most likely to leave the beleaguered waitress a big tip, actually. Studies have been done on this that show that people with our views are much more likely to give to charity, much more. How much do you think Kamala Harris tips? Right around 0, right? And so actually it's a pure inversion of the truth. It is a really dark lie. It's an evil lie. It's a sign actually of evil when you lie like that. There are many different ways to lie, and those of you who have children are familiar with a lot of them because kids lie. And it's always a little bit shocking when you catch your 4-year-old, who's like the center of your life and the most beautiful, pure being ever to exist, and you catch that child lying because, that's just part of what it is to be human. We're all fallen. But the way that kids lie is so instructive, and I'm sure you've seen it. Like, you come downstairs in the morning and like the Oreos are gone. And your 4-year-old comes down and you're like, did you eat the Oreos? And the 4-year-old is totally ashamed to be caught because the 4-year-old wants your love and acceptance and, does not want you to be mad at him. But he knows that he did it. And so he tells a lie that's like 3 degrees off the truth. He's like, well, I had 1. Well, there were 11 Oreos here, Dylan. Like, what happened to the other 10? I don't know. I had, maybe 2. And like every parent has seen this. And that's and you scold the child for lying because you want to raise honest children. In fact, that's really what you want out of life, is honest children. It's the most important thing. Honesty is the most important thing. However, it's an understandable kind of lie. That's not the kind of lie that our leaders tell us. The kind of lie the leaders tell us is the exact mirror image, the photographic negative of the truth. It's the opposite of the truth. So if you caught Kamala Harris and said, Kamala Harris, did you eat those Oreos? She would say, no, you did. You ate those Oreos, you racist. And there's something very effective about that because it throws you off. It's like, wait, these are the people. So I'm 55. I grew up in a world that kind of thought Martin Luther King was onto something, and we should judge our fellow Americans because they're our fellow Americans. We're in this together. We share this country. We should judge them by what they're like as people. And the Christians among us, which in my childhood was most of us, understood that God created all of us. We're all created by God, period. So we all have that divine spark within us. So you may be super annoyed at somebody, but in the end, God created him too. So you can't write people off on the basis of how they look. You can definitely write them off on the way they behave, fair, but not on how they were born. That's unfair. Everyone understood that. But people like Kamala Harris have created a system. It's like pretty common to the system we claimed we hated, where everyone is judged by their appearance and their genetics before any other factor. That's racist, okay? That's the definition of racist. That's what we said we hated. She did that. And so for her to turn around and tell me or you, who actually would like to live in a colorblind meritocracy, which was like the promise of this country, that you're the racist, it's like, no, you ate the Oreos, honey, I didn't. But there's something about that kind of lying that throws you off base. It's like shocking. It's like so stunning that someone could lie with that little effect. Like all of us, like a normal person, not even a particularly good person, like let's just say me, you don't feel good telling a lie. Like your face twitches or you kind of look down. You can't make eye contact while you lie. I watched Kamala Harris last night. You ate the Oreos. And you're like, wow, maybe I did. Because nobody could make that claim unless there was a little bit of truth to it. Maybe I had one Oreo, maybe I was sleepwalking, maybe I had a head injury. Did I have a stroke? I remember this. I remember being called, the first time someone called me racist, I was like, huh? First of all, that's awful. No, I don't want to be called that. But I remember thinking about it. Am I a racist? No. Actually, I just don't like you. And you're a rich white lady. I don't think that's racism. I just don't like you. Anyway, after a while, watching people lie like that, and particularly watching them lie in the very specific way they do, which is accusing you of moral crimes, it can make you enraged. And here's what can happen, and I think this is part of the design. It can turn you into a hater, actually. They call you a hater enough, it will make you hate. It will. Maybe not on racial lines or whatever, but it'll fill you with hate. To be attacked like that so unfairly and to watch people wreck a country that your ancestors built, that they did nothing to build at all, and to sort of give it away to the rest of the world, give cell phones to people here illegally. What? There's nothing more insulting than that. You know, there's nothing more insulting than that. You can't afford a house, but they're giving housing vouchers to someone who broke the law to get here? What? You don't have to be anti-immigrant, which I'm not, by the way. I'm hardly anti-immigrant. I'm against that because that's the most unfair and insulting thing anyone's ever done. You're treating our country like a rental car. Seriously, like a rental car. Like you're scraping against, barriers in the Walmart parking lot and not changing the oil. Like you don't care. And that can fill you with hate after a while. And I would argue, because I do think this is spiritual, I don't think any of this is political, actually. I think the goal is destruction. The goal is lying for its own sake. The goal is to break things, actually. There's no effort to build anything. They're always telling you they're gonna make a better society. Okay, go ahead. By the way, if Kamala Harris just fixed the roads, made the DMV a little better, you know what I mean? Drop the price of breakfast cereal by $1. I wouldn't like her. I wouldn't agree with her on tons of issues. But at least you're doing something. You're making things a little better. Kind of hard to deny that. I'm for progress, actually. I think most of us are. No, it's only about destruction. And part of the thing they seek to destroy is you from within. They call you a hater in the hope that you'll become one. That's true. And you just can't let them. You can't let them do that. And so and the reason that you can't let them do that is not for some abstract principle. I mean, again, I'm a Christian, I think that would be wrong. But it's not just because I disagree with it ideologically, it's because you don't want to live in hate. And as someone who lived in DC for a long time, I saw it. I saw people I really loved and respected become completely consumed with hatred, almost all on the left, maybe some on the right, but not that I can think of. I'm sure there are. But the Trump thing, I watched that whole thing. And I watched people I'm thinking of one of my closest friends who was a wonderful person, nice family, very smart, way smarter than I am, become so obsessed with hating Trump. Not disliking Trump or disagreeing with Trump or calling him orange, all of which is fine. It's kind of hilarious, but that's okay. But actually hating to the point where his entire world revolved around hating this one guy to the exclusion of everything else, including love and joy. And I watched, and I'm sure you've seen that. Maybe they don't have that in Oklahoma. But in the other 49 states, it's pretty common. And, a lot of it is just displacing your own unhappiness or frustration with being middle-aged or whatever, the sadness of life, onto something else. There's that. But it's also true on a much deeper level that hating itself is bad for you. It does not help you at all. It doesn't help you achieve your goals. And your first goal ought to be to love the people around you. That is your duty, okay? That's the reason you're here, is to help people around you. And you can't do that when you're filled with hate because you're completely distracted by this rage within you and it diminishes you. And so you have to keep that out because you'll become like them. And if you become like them, then what is the point of the exercise? You might as well join them get a job at some private equity firm, you know what I mean? And just like be them. It pays a lot better to be them. In the last election, Bobby Kennedy just told me this. He's a wonderful man, by the way. I didn't know what I thought, but I think a lot of him now. He told me that in the 2020 election, Joe Biden's voters, I think there were several billion of them, I can't remember the exact number, it was 2 or 3 times the population of the earth voted for Joe Biden. But in this country, Joe Biden's voters held 70% of the wealth in the United States, and Donald Trump's voters held 30%. So that tells you how the parties have completely inverted. And so for working people or people who've been excluded from the current completely fake economy that they've created for themselves and their own enrichment, it's Trump is the party for those people, okay? And so I guess if you wanted to be rich, if you want to participate in the fake economy that doesn't actually make anything, it just loots, you would already be on their side. But you're not, because your conscience won't allow you to be. So don't destroy yourself through hate. And the other thing that they're all about is violence. It's hurting people. And I've been on the right my entire life, and one of the things that I think we forgot is that it is absolutely wrong. It is immoral. In fact, it is the greatest sin to kill people except in self-defense, period. And that's a pretty clear religious order, actually. It's in the books that we have, that we refer to constantly. And you can argue about what self-defense is, and a lot of really smart, decent people have, and I've got a wide strike zone for that, and I'm not judging anybody. I'm only saying if you're taking glee in shedding human blood, you're a monster, and you're serving a monster, which is called Satan, actually. And you should never, ever take joy in shedding human blood. Sorry. It's kind of weird to feel like that's a controversial statement, but it shouldn't be. It's very obvious, and it's terrible for you to worship the suffering of other people, or violence, or human sacrifice, which they worship. They had an abortion ban outside their convention, like it couldn't be clearer. So that's just killing for its own sake because you think you're going to be more powerful when you shed human blood. So I think the response to them, here's what I would argue. The response to them, whatever happens, you cannot let them steal your soul. And so the first thing to remember is that the only real way to judge how you are doing is not by living on the internet or some social media app or externalizing all of your fears and anxieties onto some politician or political campaign or whatever. It's to look around to the people around you in your orbit, the people for whom you're responsible. And responsibility occurs, in my opinion, in concentric circles. And this is an act of God in the life of every human being. God puts people right around you, and then a little farther out around you, and then a little farther out. And your job is to work from closest to you outward to make sure everyone's okay and well served. And then when they are, you move to the next circle, and then the next circle. And then finally, when every single person who's related to you, who went to school with you, who works for you, who works with you, who lives down the street from you, when they're all fine, then you can send mosquito nets to another country to help people you don't know. But the first responsibility, the reason you are here, is to love the people around you.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. I am not in the studio. I'm in and you can hear it in the audio probably, I'm in the back of an SUV outside a hotel in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think it's Tulsa, Oklahoma. Anyway, we're on the road for this month-long tour, and there's a lot going on in the world, and the question is, how do you understand what's happening? I mean, it's not all on Twitter, sorry, much as we love Twitter. There are deeper trends unfolding. You probably sense that, and it would be helpful to have some grounding in exactly what they are. And if you're like me and you spent 4 years in college and didn't learn all that much, where do you go to understand what's happening to your world? Well, Hillsdale College, in our opinion, is one of the very few places left in the English-speaking world where your kids can get a real education, but not just your kids, you. They have free online classes, completely free. You can get them anywhere, including in the back seat of an SUV outside a hotel in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you'll know that when you go there. Go to tuckerforhillsdale.com, and they have an amazing new course called Marxism, Socialism, and Communism. Hillsdale is offering it. It doesn't cost you a dime, and you can pull it up right on your phone if you want. Go to tuckerforhillsdale.com, and the class, Marxism, Socialism, and Communism, and you'll have a much better understanding of what you're watching every day.
Well, it's true, and it's obviously true. Someone just said, preach. That's the last thing I'm qualified to do. I grew up an Episcopalian. Are you joking? don't even think that's allowed. I'm not allowed to preach, and I shouldn't be. My job is to notice the obvious things. And if God puts people right next to you, your job is to serve them, period. And that's the way you measure success and happiness. How is my spouse doing? How are my children doing? If you don't have a spouse or children, bless you. But there are still people around you. You still have obligations. And you have, the potential for great joy. It's not just an obligation. It's like, that's what life is. It's your relationships with the people right next to you. And if all of them are doing pretty well, you're doing pretty well. And just don't lose, it doesn't mean what happens to your country doesn't matter, the country that your ancestors built, that does matter. It matters in a global sense. This is the final beacon of light to the world. That's a fact. It's not just some dumb cable news talking point. That's a fact. Okay, so that does matter. History matters. Your role in history matters. All of that matters. But the first thing that matters is how the people around you are doing. So just don't forget that. They want to make you forget that. So I'm getting so spun up, I'm getting Perrier. I'm putting a little emergency Perrier here. And that's why they spend so very much time trying to divide you from the people closest to you. That's why they're always encouraging you to insult your grandparents at Thanksgiving over one of their stupid policies. Literally, how to have the conversation with grandpa, the racist anti-COVID vax guy. You're trying to break apart my family. You're a monster and a criminal. We should say that. Anyone who tries to break apart other people's families is a monster and a criminal, period. That's the worst offense you could commit. There's no worse crime than that, actually. And they do it out in the open. The media does it. I'm not even gonna talk about the media. They're clearly servants of evil, obviously. But we know that. It's not even worth, whatever, got it. Well, I know that. I've been 33 years in the media, so I can promise you that's true. But don't let them divide you from the people you love, which is another way of saying don't let them divert your attention from the things that really matter, which are the people directly in front of you. And the second thing that you should remember, they're gonna try and goad you into violence. Now, you could certainly make the case that in some cases it's justified. I've said this in public and I mean it. When I was growing up, if someone got creepy, sexual with your kid, you got to punch them out. Period. That just wasn't allowed. And so I don't understand why every school in the country has these therapists and nurses who are having creepy sex talks with your kids. Why do people, we're the dads, actually. Shut the school down over that. Shut the school down. You're not allowed to have creepy sex talks with my kids, period. Under any circumstances. And I don't care if you're some heavy-set nurse who's I'm just doing it. I don't care. You're a creep. Get out of here right now. That's just a fact. I don't care how they describe themselves or tell you what they think they're doing or whatever lie they make up to justify what's actually happening, which is creepy sex talk with your kids. If it was a stranger in the park, you'd punch him out. So I'm just noting that. I'm not advocating violence. I guess what I'm saying is it's very obvious to me that they are violence worshipers. They've spent the last 20 years paying very close attention to every federal agency with guns. They're all about violence. They love pointless wars. They love killing people for no reason in other countries, just for the sake of it, because it makes them feel powerful. Hillary Clinton laughs as she talks about the murder of somebody. Really? A human being, I don't care who's dying. No normal human being feels glee at the death of another human being. I don't care if he deserved it or not. That's sick. And your soul is rotted if you feel that way. Don't let your soul rot. But that's how they are. They worship violence and blood. That's why they love abortion. And euthanasia. Don't become that. So if we get to a point in this country where things are really moving, in the wrong direction in a threatening way, you still should not commit violence. You don't have to hurt anybody. Here's what you have to do. You have to be willing to be hurt. That's the truth. You do. You have to be willing to stand up and say, I'm not gonna hurt anybody, but I will put it all on the line. And that actually changes things. I can think there's one sort of famous leader in first century Palestine who did that. And there have been, subsequent leaders who followed his example. If you want things to change, you have to make sacrifices. And those do not have to include hurting other people physically. I'm sorry, they don't. But they do include being willing to be inconvenienced or punished. And the question at that point arises, well, how serious are you about it? Does it really matter to you? If you actually felt your family was threatened, what wouldn't you give up? in order to protect them? Would you give up your safety and your convenience? I think you would. So just be prepared to do that. And the last thing I will say before turning it over to my friend Dan Bongino is that you have to keep your sense of humor. It's so important. It's balm for the soul to laugh. And I have a terrible tendency to go right to sort of bitter, nasty mockery. I'm not recommending that. That's a reflection of my own diseased soul that I can't just make normal jokes. I have to make fun of Kamala Harris. Of all the things she's done, the fact that she was Montel Williams' side piece is the first thing I go to because it's like hilarious. I don't think that's a virtuous thing to do. I'm a little ashamed that I do it, so is my wife, as she's pointed out many times. But the capacity to laugh at what you're seeing around you, and especially laugh at yourself, to note how inherently ridiculous you are, so important. And I worked in a business my whole life of people who were really smart and talented and high achievers, television. But the one thing they didn't have was the capacity to laugh at themselves because they could not admit how inherently absurd they were. And I always wanted to mandate as a rule, all the TV networks I worked at, where every male anchor would have to have mounted a full-length mirror outside his shower. And I just felt like that would solve the problem immediately because, and I'm including myself in this, like there's no way as a man that you can all of a sudden catch sight of yourself naked, lumpy, furry, this kind of lopsided primate, and take yourself that seriously. Like you kind of know you're not God. I don't know, I don't have a ton of mirrors in my house, but occasionally I'll be on the road in a hotel and be like, what the hell is that? Oh, that's me. Well, I'm absurd, aren't I? I can't believe my wife, bless my wife, never mentioning that to me. Women are so great, they're the best. But it's so, and it, you know, obviously there's horror and an attempt to spray the mirror with shaving cream to make the images stop. But after I calmed down, I'm like, I'm so glad I saw that because I've been restored to reality. I put myself in perspective in the world. You know, one of the saddest things about modern society is the light that our cities emit at night prevent us from seeing the stars. And when you can't see the stars, it's not just because I'm interested in astronomy, which I'm not. I am interested in perspective very much. And we live in a rural area. When I look up at night, the first thing I think is, boy, am I insignificant. I actually don't think I'm the center of the universe. And it slowly dawns on me. Like, I don't think I'm the most important thing. And it's good to know that because I'm not, actually. And humor is a really great shortcut to that understanding. If you can laugh at yourself, if you can laugh at the situations around you, you have instantly put it into perspective. And the important perspective is this is just a blip on a timeline that goes on for who knows how long. It does end, by the way. I just don't know when. But that kind of lets everybody know you feel that. But the most important thing about humor is there's nothing that your opponents hate more than being laughed at because they think they're God. And when you laugh at them, it is like hitting the Wicked Witch of the West with a garden hose. They just melt into this cackling pile of witch clothes. They can't stand it. If you make fun of them, you disempower them because you tell the truth about them, and the truth is they're absurd. They may be evil, but they're also stupid. And we need to say that out loud, and in fact, it's the saving grace. If they were evil and smart, we'd be in serious trouble. But no, they're Kamala Harris. They may have dark intentions, but she's still dumb. And I just thank God for that every day. So with that, I want to introduce Dan Bongino, who, from my experience spending the day in Tulsa, I've learned everybody knows Dan Bongino. Everyone's wearing his awesome t-shirts. Everyone seems to love him. So I just want to add very quickly my perspective on Dan Bongino, whom I worked with. I knew Dan Bongino. I actually had Dan Bongino on when he was running for office, when he just left the Secret Service, and then I became his coworker, and then I became his friend, which I am now. I would say two things about Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino is one of the smartest people I've ever met, actually. Dan Bongino has the ability to boil down what's happening, incredibly complex things, into the perfect distillation. Like he can tell you exactly what's happening in one phrase, and he does it in a Queens accent, Queens, New York accent, which is just absolutely the greatest. And the second thing I'll tell you about Dan Bongino, you probably already suspect, is he's one of the toughest human beings in the world, for real. Not just because he can do 50 one-arm push-ups, which he can, Ask him what his pull-up record is. I haven't even bothered. It's a lot. No, I mean in a much more significant way. He's tough inside. And you know that the measure for most men is how you deal with your employer. Because it's one thing to be the tough guy in the bar or at your own dinner table. Dad's pretty tough. One thing about dad is he's pretty tough. Okay, yeah. Okay, Dad, slow down. But what's your attitude at work? If your employer's like, I want you to do something that violates your conscience, and no one's around, there's no one around. Your wife doesn't know. You're not humiliated in front of your loved ones. It's just like, go ahead and do this thing and everything will be cool. What's your answer? Just sort of violate your own moral code. No one will know. And I just happen to know for a fact that Dan Bongino's response was like, what? Get bent. No, next. And so Dan Bongino's definitely the kind of guy who would have a lot of trouble holding a job in the media business. In fact, it would be impossible. And so Dan Bongino has made his own media business, which has been wildly successful. And I'm proud to be his friend on the basis of that and many other qualities. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Bongino. Oh man, I'm glad you're here.
What a crowd. Good to be here with you, bro.
And I'm glad you're here. I think you took work off to be here, which I'm really grateful for. But I've waited all day. I think you're the first person I've asked this. What did you make of that debate last night?
Well, here's what I usually have to, the Bongino rule? Yeah, who listens to my show? Okay. So we've got a few.
Everybody.
So there's 2 or 3. There's 2. My statistics course and my math skills are terrible, but what do I always tell you with the Bongino rule? I say give it about 24 hours to let a story brew. So I generally, like Tucker, will go and listen to what most of the jerkwads in the mainstream media have to say, and then I naturally assume the opposite is true.
Fair.
Right? So when I heard this morning, after watching the debate and doing the live show, any of you guys tune into our live stream? Yeah, man. We kicked some ass. Did you see that? We were number 5 in the world. We beat all these billion-dollar media companies in my attic, in a studio. It's falling apart. Siri with wires hanging out of the ceiling. We did that. Well, you all did it for us, and we appreciate it. So I get up in the morning, and having run for office and having been on TV and in radio, I realized, when you run and you got skin in the game, that everything you know about politics is probably wrong from the candidate side. It's only 2 things. Anyone know what it is? Man, you got my homies here. My man, brother, I love this guy. I'm gonna come down. If my knee wasn't bad, jump off the stage and hug you. It's 2 things if you listen to my show. And if anyone tells you it's anything different than these 2 things, promptly dismiss them as ignorant morons. Politics are snapshots and sound bites. That's it. Guys like me and Tucker and all of you politically active patriots, you guys don't need to be convinced. You guys don't need a white paper to understand that high marginal tax rates suck and all that. You don't need that, okay? The Americans out there who are busy, and I don't hold anything against them, who are busy and working in that soccer games, right? They see a picture and they see a soundbite and they hear a soundbite. That's it. So when I woke up this morning, I noticed that through the snapshots and soundbites lens, I'm looking at the snapshots of Kamala Harris. And I'm like, someone gonna show me the good one? She's like, no, I'm serious. What the hell was it? The thinker pose? From the famous statue? Kamala, who's never been known as a thinker, she's like, the school bus, and the greatest clip ever, Trump with Tucker. And then they get on the school bus. So I'm like, okay, where's the snapshot? Everyone has a snapshot. Remember even George W. Bush, he was debating Gore, and Gore came over. Remember he gave him the look, and that was the snapshot, right? Where was the snapshot? So the media's telling me it was this big, resounding victory. President Kamala Harris, ladies and gentlemen, everyone go home. And I'm like, okay, there are no snapshots, so I'm gonna have to clean this up for my audience, some of them may believe this BS. And then I said, well, clearly there'll be a soundbite. I won't take advantage of my opponent's youth and inexperience. The 1980s called for their foreign policy back. There's going to be one of those, right? And I noticed something. There wasn't. It's like magic. And you know why? Because the left-wing media goons have a problem right now. And the problem is Elon Musk. They did not want to, I'm serious, and it's a real problem. They did not want to spread the BS sound bites around because they were all fake. None of them were real. They were all inauthentic nonsense. You know, the fine people thing, we've heard it. The bloodbath, we've heard that too. There's no soundbite either. So sorry, I promise I'll keep my other answers tighter, but long-winded answer to a very simple question. That debate was at best a push. And if it's a push and Trump is ahead, which I believe he is, then I take it as a W for us. So don't believe the hype.
For 35 years, Liberty Safe has been the #1 manufacturer of safes made in this country, American made, from start to finish. They make high-quality gun safes, I've got one, vault doors, home safes, handgun vaults, whatever you need to protect the things you value. And again, I can tell you from personal experience, these guys know what they're doing. I use Liberty Safes for the things that I don't want stolen, the things that really matter, my father's shotguns, the documents that I've got to have, and a lot more. I'm not going to tell you what else, but you need one. Crime rates are way up, and if you have anything you would like to protect that you need to protect, Liberty Safes is the way to do it. Now, Liberty Safe has over 350 dealers nationwide who specialize in delivery and installation and answering any questions you have. If you've got somebody to protect, they've got a way to protect it. Visit libertysafe.com, pick out what you need, and be sure to use the code Tucker at checkout to let them know that we sent you. They'll take care of the rest. Liberty Safe is a product we fervently believe in. With Liberty Safe, you are always protected.
Sorry. No, that wasn't long-winded at all. I think that's really smart, and I think you're absolutely right. I kept thinking, you know, you're frustrated. It's just like anything. It's like watching your kids play sports. Like, God, you know, don't you see that? You know, whatever. Yeah. But, and the closer you are and the more emotionally invested you are, you know, the more emotional you are about it. But I didn't see any moment in that where someone's like, I'm really not sure who to vote for. Oh, I'm voting Kamala Harris.
Yeah. I think when you run for office, and you see this too, you start to figure out too that political narratives that the mainstream media tell you are damaging are typically not. The only damaging political narrative, or what would have hurt Trump last night, because I believe he's ahead. Now, is there going to be some cheating and scamming? Yeah, in a fair election, I believe he's ahead. So if he's ahead, all he had to do was push last night, but we were told he lost. I went on my show today and said he didn't. So if he lost, there had to be a damaging and destructive political narrative. The only damaging and destructive political narratives are ones that do this one thing. They change your pre-existing notion of who a candidate is, right? I'll give you a quick example, right?
That's smart, that's right.
You hear a story about Ted Cruz in a strip club. It hurts. That's gonna ding him up. That's not his reputation. Everybody believes him to be a far different guy, which he is. That's a damaging story. Yet you hear that story, say like some country singer who's a real party or something, runs for office, and you hear he was in a strip club last week. Is it gonna it's not gonna do anything. That's why all those stories about Donald Trump, people had already seen him on the Howard Stern show talking about being a young single guy in New York. Like none of it hurt. So I ask you, if Trump got hurt last night, what changed your mind? Good luck. That's why everybody's quiet, because you know I'm right. But what changed your mind about Kamala Harris? Well, 28% of voters say they don't know who Kamala Harris is. Well, who is she after last night? Yeah, you in the front row. Well, who is she? Oh, I don't know. She's the thinker lady? What did she tell you last night that changed your mind? Nothing. So how did we lose? I agree with your point. I think there were a couple moments, and I think you and I mean, you're like, you are the master debater. You have to say those words. If you listen to my show, you know, don't say them fast.
I've been
together.
called worse.
You are the man. You have to say, but you did this for a living on TV in front of 4 million people a night. it's our instinct to go, gosh, you had it, like go for it. And I get it 100%. There were a couple answers that probably could have been tighter, but I feel pretty good. I'm not cocky about it. I don't want to hear any talk about a red wave. You're gonna get kicked in the nuts again if you keep talking about that. But I feel, sorry, I put a cup on, but I just like, I feel pretty good. Last night was at best a push.
It's interesting that you said that the Twitter, that X, that Elon Musk is a pivotal figure in this election. Can you flesh it out a little bit?
So I'm reading this article in the Washington Post, the democracy dies in the dark.
It's always the opposite, of course, as noted, of what they're saying.
Do you believe
But they are literally
Post?
an iron curtain over information. The point of the Washington Post is to hide reality from you, is to tell you that your eyes are lying to you.
Isn't it hilarious? Like they had the balls to put that on like their masthead, like democracy dies at the Washington Post. Like that's hilarious. I'm reading this piece the other day, and the headline is, it's the 1,000th piece with the same title: Elon Musk's misinformation about the elections, a threat to democracy. From the people who promoted the Russia hoax, the Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian disinformation hoax. It was kind of hilarious. And I thought, and I know, Tucker, you and I actually discussed this on my show when you were kind enough to come on at the RNC. I thought to myself, like, folks, the demons are real, man. Evil's a very real thing. Evil's a very real thing. I was talking to this gentleman who runs a pro-life advocacy group, this guy Dan, who he advertises on our show too. And we're talking about a group of people right now who talk about the craziest things, like castrating kids in schools, showing them porn. What you said before, I've heard you say many times, and you're right, like this is the kind of stuff 30 years ago you'd be beaten up by the parents or arrested for doing, and everybody would celebrate you. And the thing about Elon that has them so threatened is Elon has provided a platform for the first time, and he's a self-admitted not conservative, he's just not a liberal either, that has them genuinely threatened because the liberals built this thing. They built essentially this new global, almost like cosmic town square with Starlink, right? They built this cosmic town square, which they thought mistakenly was gonna create a monopoly over ideas for the next generation of kids. And what happened? This Tony Stark-like billionaire comes in and buys the platform and says, listen, I'm not really a conservative, but those are crazy. And I'm gonna let you conservatives talk. And the entire world melted down. I mean, there is nothing that frightens the liberal right. Am I crazy? What is the liberal's biggest fear? The modern liberal, his biggest fear is the community note. There is nothing the liberal hates more than being embarrassed because they're not used to it. Listen, you worked at CNN with Crossfire and all these people. You know how they are. They are so used to being at these bourgeois cocktail parties. They're so used to having the foie gras fed to them and people kissing their ass. Remember the old adage was, don't mess with people who buy ink by the barrel. People mess with the cops before they mess with the media. And now nobody respects them. People are like, community note, you dumbass. And they look stupid and they don't know how to respond. Elon has changed everything. The whole game has changed and they don't know what to do.
So I would say, I would put a little finer point on and say, I've been around rich liberals every single day of my life until 4 years ago when I just said I'm never gonna be around them again. I did my time. But I spent 51 years around rich liberals, and I think the secret that they're hiding, they don't hide the weirdness of their sex lives or the chaos of their personal lives, that's all known. The one thing they don't want you to know is that they're mediocre. That they don't have any skills, actually. They can't really do anything. And so they built this entire universe of nonprofits and colleges and government bureaucracies, all designed to give them employment, wealth, and status, when in fact, they don't deserve any of it because they're totally useless people, actually. They can't do anything. They're not impressive. They're dumb. And I know that because I know them. I'm not guessing about this. And I think social media have allowed us to see who they really are. So like, you know, Hillary Clinton is like not an impressive, you know, she's evil or whatever, and she's worshiping Baal in her spare time and all that. True. But really, she's like not very smart. She's never had an original thought. She's totally banal. If you asked her like her deepest thought, it would be like, today is the first day of the rest of my life. Like she's got a kind of bumper sticker IQ. She's an idiot, actually. They all are idiots. And social media allows everyone to know that. And so they just can't wait to put people like you in prison so you'll stop pointing it out.
You know, that's just brilliant. You know Fred Siegel? He passed, but he wrote Revolt Against the Masses.
He was my editor, actually, for years. Wonderful man.
Man, he has an amazing book I can't recommend enough. It's called Revolt Against the Masses. And it's a history of what Tucker just said. You pointed that out just beautifully, and you segued nicely from social media. But the gist of the book is very simple, that what Tucker said is accurate. These people hate everything meritocratic or anything involved in a meritocracy precisely because they have no merit. They are completely mediocre people who yearn for this new aristocracy of ideas where because they said something and they've got an NGO label next to them that you're supposed to default to it's true. And under the even mildest of scrutiny from a former cop who grew up in Queens who asks a simple question like, there's a pee-pee tape out there? It's kind of weird, no one's seen it, right? Like Donald Trump drinks Diet Coke for breakfast and it was a major story in the Washington Post. Like, there's a pee-pee tape out there? And they're like, how dare you ask that question? I'm part of the ideological aristocracy. Weren't you a cop and an agent? Yeah, I worked for a living. I had a real job. I have kids. I'm sorry you didn't. But I mean, you having worked with these idiots, that's a brilliant point. That in social media, you're exposed to their imbecility every single day and they hate it. And Elon won't give the buffer mechanism of deleting your account. And he allows you to go back and forth with them, you know?
But I didn't used to think this. I always thought because I worked in the media and people would always say they hated the media and I'd be like, all right, but it's not that big a deal that the media is rotten. I completely changed my view, but it's people speaking is the thing that upsets them most.
Yeah.
You can unleash physical hell on a city. You can destroy our largest city, New York City, through unrestrained immigration, and people are literally defecating on the sidewalk and getting raped on the subway, and it's like not a big deal to them. But if you say something out loud that exposes their lies, they actually want to kill you. That is the one thing they can't stand. So my question to you, as someone who just left the media and built his own media, God bless you for that, once again. Like, how long can they tolerate you? Honestly, because what you do is not just inconvenient to them, it's like the thing they hate most. Like, they stay up late thinking about you.
Yeah. I wrote a whole chapter in this last book about basically giving a middle finger to these it's not just leftists, by the way, it's swampy Republicans too. I hope you all understand that. Like, don't think yeah, I mean, listen, you expect stupidity from the liberals, but what Tucker's getting at with this, they don't want you to speak. He's 100% spot on, and it's the swampy right too. And how long will they let me speak? I say all the time, like the most dangerous guy, and probably cliched, but whatever. But it's true. Cliches always have an element of truth to them, or they wouldn't be cliches, right? The most dangerous person in the world is someone with actually nothing to lose. And I had this weird moment. I don't want to be macabre, and I'm not here to be like Danny Downer, but when you get something like cancer, and they're like, "Hey, man, you could like die and stuff, and that's not cool." And where's my "don't get dead" guy here? And there you go, don't get dead, brother. What's the number one rule of the damn Bongino show? Don't get dead. So when and liberals do things that help you get dead, but so does cancer. Cancer will help you get dead quick, so don't get it. It sucks. So when you survive something like that, and you realize, gosh, man, I know I have an expiration date, but I was hoping it wasn't like next week or anything like that, right? It changes everything. And they tried to stop me. I got involved early with Parler because I knew Twitter under Jack was a train wreck. And it took $3 trillion companies to take me down. You know, we were the #1 app in the world, not in news, not in the world. We built that thing from 200,000 users to 20 million in a year I was involved. And it took Apple, Google, and Amazon to take me down. And I gotta tell you something. I looked at my wife when it happened. It cost me a lot of money. And I put a lot of sweat equity into that. And I was, well, they tried. And I was very upset. I mean, my wife and I cried a lot about it because we really, thank you. And I said, what do you do next? So after spending a couple days thinking about like, how do I stick it to them? And this is the chapter where I wrote it. I wound up having a conversation with this guy, Chris, and he had this company called Rumble. It was largely just like a lot of pet videos. And Chris asked me, he said, do you think you can do with Rumble what you did with Parler? I said, you're damn right I can. I said, give me one more shot to stick it to these people. And I'll tell you something, last night, I saw some statistic, I think it was on Live Search app, that 13% of the digital video traffic last night in the United States was Rumble. And I thought to myself, holy shit, you believe that? We were doing pet videos, 5 years ago, and thanks to his, so you can't let him win, Tucker, ever. And they took us down, and then they said, well, what if they come get you on the servers? So we were like, okay, let's build our own server farm. And then someone said to me, and that's what we did in Rumble. Now we have Rumble Cloud. And then someone said to me, Dan, they're gonna cancel you processing, like Stripe's gonna come after you. I said, how hard is it to start a processing company? They were like, it's hard. I said, let's start one. And it's great. We have parallel economy. And then they said, the book publisher, they're definitely not gonna publish any of your books. So I looked at my wife and I said, she's backstage. I'm like, how hard is it you think to publish books? Very hard. I'm like, yeah, let's start a publishing company. So I publish my own books now. F these people. Whatever they tell you can't do, you go do it. And then you start your own company. And then you get your own advertisers. That's how you do it. You pulled a Leo DiCaprio from Wolf of Wall Street, just don't defraud anyone. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I will haunt. You tell these liberals, I will haunt you sons of bitches for the rest of your lives on this planet. YouTube decided to cancel me. YouTube sends me a letter, an email, we're canceling you. You said masks don't work. They said, you gotta pull this video down. I said, I got a better idea. I'm gonna cancel you idiots, and I'm gonna go advocate for a platform, and then Rumble went and sued them later for like screwing them up. I'm like, screw these people. Don't ever let them beat you down, ever, ever. Whatever they tell you not to do, you do times 10. Look at my sister clapping up. My sister's here for Kelly. Wave to everyone. There she is. And then my brother-in-law, Chuck, too. I used to sleep on Kelly's floor in our house in Selden because we didn't have any air conditioning in the other room. Remember that? They'd be like, put a few blankets down. It's a hard floor. That was it. It was awesome. Good to see you.
What does the HR department at your company say when you talk like this?
Paula is the HR department. Paula, what does HR say when I talk like this? So once in a while, I'll come down. There were a couple times I was doing Unfiltered, like this Fox show, and some stuff would there was always a little squeeze sometimes, and I'd come down and she'd be like, you did it again, didn't you? I'd be like, yeah, I did. One more time, sorry.
Do you think like in your heart of hearts, deep inside, when you were working for the company you just mentioned, did you think to yourself, maybe I don't have like a super long future in corporate media?
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Listen, man, I can't work for anyone. I'm too old for this crap, Like, I have a set of ideas and things I'm going to say, and I don't really give a damn about having some, like, moral or ethical censor over me. There's a lot of things on my show I wish I could change. I met a lady on the photo line, super nice. She's obviously here. She was in the VIP thing, and she's like, Dan, I love your show, but you really have to stop cursing. And I said, I'm with you. I know she's right. Like, I love Jesus, man. I love Jesus. Jesus doesn't like when people curse. But there's a part of me that really is hard to dig out, you know, and it's this New York part of me. And when I'm dropping like a massive F-bomb, believe me, I'm not proud of myself. I got kids too. I mean, you know, sometimes I think, gosh, like my 12-year-old's probably watching this going, Dad, please don't. But I'm just a really passionate guy. And
did you talk like that growing up at the tennis club in Palm Beach, or no?
Listen, brother, I learned how to swim in a fire hydrant in a corner of 64th Place in Myrtle, and you're like this, you know? So, yeah.
I don't even know where that is. That's like
Kelly does. Kelly does. She used to come out and visit. Our parents. So Kelly's she's my sister. I've grown up with her forever, but we don't actually share any biological relationship. My parents got divorced very young, so she's always taken care of me. So she would visit her dad in the city, and then my dad would come and get us. So in order to save the ride, my father would then pick her up at my house and drive her back to Long Island after he dropped us off. So yeah, man, we grew up above a bar in a cockroach-infested apartment, so I always get a kick out of it when some, you know, liberal, you know, bag tells me, like, you don't know what it's like to be one of us. Really, bro? Are you serious? Like, I was one of you before you were ever one of you. Like, you have no idea, you know? When was your, and then you worked famously for the federal government. When did your views become what they are now? So I was a cop in New York, and I was never, ever a liberal, ever. But I was definitely a left-leaning independent. And I had a bumper sticker on my Ford Escort that said, "Question authority." Like, that was my thing. I never trusted anyone. It's the only thing that kept me from being a Democrat. I was never a Democrat, have never voted for a Democrat, never registered Democrat. But when I became a cop, I knew the conservative path was the only way. You can only walk into so many generational broken homes where the grandmother, the mother, and the kids are living in the same rent-controlled, you know, bug-infested apartment, and nobody has a job. You can only walk into that home 100 times before you say, man, if this is the government helping, like, don't help me. Please, whatever the old Reagan adage, right? I'm from the government, I'm here to, please stop helping. Please, God, and I'm not using his name in vain at all, stop helping people. And, you know, that's when I started to really see the light. And then since, you know, I'm always comfortable talking to you as a friend, I mean, it was, you know, my mom. It was hard. I mean, sorry, I don't mean to be a buzzkill, but I just lost my mom, and, you know, she, thank you, brother. I needed that. My mom, I get a call recently, it was not that long ago, and, you know, she had fallen down the stairs and died unexpectedly, but my mom was, she loved me, but the system broke her, man, it just broke her. I mean, she was this really powerful, strong woman who had been through so much, and I just watched this decay over time. And the problem is the government was always trying to help her. It was on SNAP and all these programs and all of these things. And when you tell people it's okay not to add value to the world and be productive, then I've got news for you. A lot of people will just stop being productive. And it really hurt. I mean, I tried to save her so many times, and I mean, outside of the just trauma of losing her, and when I did, it was so unexpected. The part that still gets me now is I really always thought I was 5 minutes from saving her. I swear, my wife could tell you, I was like, this time is it. Like, I'm gonna get it this time, and we're gonna turn this ship around, and I can't save her now, you know? And I'm telling you, that's what the government does to people. It's why I'm so passionate, like you, about this cause. I mean, my wife and I used to sit back at 8 o'clock. I've told you this personally. You know it's true because I've told you many times. And your monologue on Fox was must-see. It was the only thing I would sit there and like be pegged to the screen. I watched the other guys, but it was like, that was my whiteboard. Like, get the popcorn out, man. Because it was always something I learned that was insightful. And I got that you feel the same way I do. Like, I'm not passionate about, I'm not running for office, folks. I don't need any more money. I've invested a whole bunch of stuff. Life is good. I am on the air every day as an evangelist for this cause, and that is it. I don't care if I ever get another sponsor. It's to warn people that government is a cancerous plague in your life, that outside of our military, a functioning court system, and a local government for some roads and traffic lights, there is nothing these people will do for you that will not destroy you in the end. It's terrible.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's absolutely true. I don't want that to be true, but they don't have a single success, actually, not one. So, you judge the tree by its fruits. I want to ask you specifically about something that has bothered me for the past 6 weeks that we do not talk about at all, and you are uniquely positioned to comment on it, and that's the attempted assassination of Trump. And I will stop there. What was that, do you think?
Man, I was at a congressional hearing with some members of Congress who actually cared about it, Eli Crane and some others, not necessarily some of the leadership who, I'm not saying they don't care, they just it's just weird. Like the former president, potentially next president of the United States, was shot in the head on live television. A guy was murdered in front of his kids, and the stories disappeared into like the Superman 2 Phantom Zone. You remember they send Zod to it's like, that's the story. It's like out there, and you're like, nobody knows who the guy was working with. If anyone, no one, there's not a social media picture has surfaced of this kid at all. So someone asked me, was this an inside job or was this intent? And I never say anything I can't back up, ever. Because then my credibility is at stake, and I'm never going to be a sensationalist about it. But I will tell you this. Layered incompetence is intent, correct? I'll give you an example, right?
Can you repeat what you just said one more time?
Layered incompetence is intent.
Exactly.
So my brother-in-law's a doctor, right? He's a smart guy. If he's a doctor, right, and if he goes to the mall on a 110-degree Oklahoma City day, and he's drunk, sorry, Chuck, he's not a drinker, but say he's a smart cat, right? He's sitting right there, and he's drinking, and he's blowing through traffic lights, and he's got some young kid he's babysitting in the car. And then he walks in the mall and leaves him there, and the kid dies. Did he intend to kill him? No. But there is so much layered incompetence, we presume intent. So when you're a Secret Service agent, like I was for 12 years, who's done, high-level, hot zone protection operations everywhere from Afghanistan to Indonesia, I've got the receipts to back it up, and that's why they never mess with me. You ever notice that not a single person has come out from the Secret Service and been like, nah, that guy's messing. You ever notice no one's done that? They don't even dare, because I'll just whip out remember this? Oh, you weren't there for that, were you? You didn't see that, okay. So how was he put on the axe? Like, how are you walked out on stage at all when there's an open threat? How does a guy with a rangefinder manage to subvert an entire layered, $1 million security plan? How is it you don't set up a security room? So you don't have to ask me, was it an inside job or not? Because the truth is, I don't know. I don't know insiders. I'm an outsider. But I can tell you for a fact, layered incompetence is intent. And although it is relevant, obviously, if someone on the inside knew about this, and I find it very suspicious that we know nothing about this shooter at all. We know everything. If God forbid you were to, shoot a Democrat, which of course, I am absolutely, resolutely against political violence. If you were to, God forbid, do that, I promise you the media would be talking to the neighbors and everything. But why don't we know anything about this shooter, this killer? Why? You think I'm stupid? There's something going on here. And layered incompetence is absolutely intent.
Well, okay, so layered incompetence is intent. Persistent indifference is approval. So if nobody cares that Donald Trump was just shot in the face 6 weeks ago, that lets you know they approve of it.
No, nobody said, you don't find it odd either? Folks, think about it, right? There was a debate last night, the first one. Since the former president, better than probably 50-50 shots going to be the next president, is on stage, how many people brought up that he was shot in the head. Now, listen, there's nothing even remotely, but I got to tell you, man, imagine, again, God forbid it was Democrat. I protected a Democrat. I protected Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, George W. Bush. It was like a Democrat sandwich. We don't kill our political leaders, period. But you both know, God forbid someone had done the same thing to Kamala. There would have been moments of silence. Rituals would have been held before. There would have been a 7-minute montage of videos. They would have brought out like every single first responder who was there would have been honored. There would have been a closing statement about it. Donald Trump was shot in the head, not in the halcyon days of like 1954. This just happened. I just saw a movie a few weeks ago when his thing, I was coming out of a movie when I heard it happen. You're 100% correct. Like, the indifference to a man getting shot in the head on live television, and no one even mentions it at the debate. When I said to you before, brothers and sisters, man, the demons are real. Evil's real. It's not some fake thing you've seen him. I can't explain it. I don't know what the hell it is. I'm not your preacher. I'm not your philosopher. Is it some quantum mechanics thing? Is it entanglement? Is it every good, particle has an entangled? I have no idea. I don't know what it is. But because I don't know what it is doesn't mean it isn't there. My dog doesn't understand physics. It doesn't mean it's not real. It's real. And the fact that not a single person brought up last night, David Muir, what was with David? Is this guy kidding me? Trump's debating 3 people last night. And then you get this Lindsay, whatever her name is, that they didn't even have the courtesy to say, Mr. President, we want to acknowledge what happened to you. We feel really terrible from the family at ABC. Thank you for coming out tonight. It would have been a moment where I think even you and I can't stand ABC. Would have been like, all right, whatever. Like, at least they said it. Not a word. Not a freaking word about it. Guy got shot in the head on TV. And by the way, he's been amazing. He don't even talk about it. I'm not a name dropper, I promise. It's stupid, and you look like a moron when you do it. And there's 2 things don't ever do. Don't ever tell anyone your education, because then you're probably an idiot. And don't ever name drop. But in this case, it's important. I spoke to him the next day after that. Now, maybe 2 days. I want to be precise. And this guy, man, it was like nothing happened. I was like, hey, Mr. President, I was calling about something. I never call him, ever. So whatever I do, trust me, he picks up, because I never call him. I said to him, man, being a Secret Service guy, shot in the head on that, like, I'm horrified, we let you down. He was like, yeah, that sucked, man, shot in the head. He goes, I heard the bullet whizzed by. And then he was like, I think he went on to ask me about Egg McMuffins or something. Like, he's just like, him, like, he's just the most, any other politician would have done a National Day of Remembrance. The guy got shot in the head on live TV, and he's like, yeah, man, really sucked, hurt my ear, I gotta wear this bandage. That's just who he is, man. Sorry, had to throw that in there.
What it said, I completely agree with that. And in fact, his first reaction to getting shot that night was, I can't believe how brave everybody at the event was. They didn't run.
Right, nothing about it.
And I thought, here this guy's been attacked as a narcissist, among many other things, a threat to democracy. And his first concern is for everybody else, and he's impressed by their bravery. Just quite amazing. But I do think, and I don't want to get dark about it or whatever, but the fact that, for example, last night at the debate, he said to Kamala Harris, you've attacked me as a threat to democracy, not just as someone you disagree with, or the opposing, your opponent, but as an actual threat to the United States and its continued existence. Maybe you inspired the guy to shoot me in the face. And everyone's just like, oh, stop complaining. Oh, shut up, it's just a 223, it's not a big deal. And you feel like they're for violence. I don't know how else to interpret that. A normal person is horrified by someone getting shot. By the way, if Kamala Harris got shot in the face, I would be totally opposed to that. I'm against shooting people in the face, I just am. And I don't like her at all, but they're not against it. That's what I'm saying.
But what you're, I think you and I always ask people to bring facts and data, and we call them, I jokingly call them receipts on the show. Like, what you just said isn't even remotely controversial. That the left I'm not going to stigmatize all Democrats, but that the modern left, the progressive, liberal, radical left, worships violence as a political tool of oppression is not even remotely controversial if you just read the news. I mean, you had people, am I crazy? Like, you all saw it. So BLM and Antifa decided it's a good idea to start burning down American cities, which ironically were mostly liberal. It's like, wow, you ever hear that, the dog, you know why dogs, like, generally you put a dog in a cage to train them because they won't, like, shit in their own den kind of thing? Not liberals, like, they will right there, like, you can't train them. They're burning their own cities down, and you've got Ali
Wait, hold on, they didn't have a choice. I mean, I'm not the first one to note try that in a small town. It actually won't work.
It will not, it's not gonna, it's like, you've got this, like, you're so correct, because you've got this, like, Stockholm syndrome with liberals who are like, if I don't let another angry liberal burn my liberal city down, then I'm part of the problem too. You're like, what? Are you always this stupid? Like, did you just hear yourself, you idiot? So it's like, they're burning the cities down. We're all watching this. I mean, brother, you and I were on the air when this is going down, and Ali Velshi from MSNBC, I'm pretty sure it was Ali, he's like, it's a mostly peaceful, but there's a building in the background, bro. It's burning. And there's people like, yeah, this is great. Like, there is zero dispute the left glorifies violence. Zero. We don't have this problem at all. People ask me all the time, oh, political violence, what did January 6th say? Don't riot, don't hit cops. It's not hard. Wait, what's the problem? Oh, you're shocked at my answer. That's fascinating, because Kamala Harris, according to the FBI, was almost killed by a pipe bomb, and the only people covering it are freaking conservatives, not you. You told me I was supposed to be concerned about violence on January 6th. I'm the only one talking about it outside of a few other reporters like Julie Kelly. They love violence. They love it. And here's the reason. And don't ever forget this. This is the most frightening part about the modern liberal. See, we're all God-fearing patriots in this room, so you have a built-in emergency brake on your behavior, right? Your values do not come from the Constitution. They're only protected by this document, but they come from God with a capital G. That's a different power. But it creates an asymmetric war for us, and it does, and you should never forget this. Because of that emergency brake, God, there are things you won't do to other people. You just won't. You will not go and punch Tucker Carlson or me in the face. You won't do it. Not because someone told you not to do it, but because God has imbued in you a sense of values, and you just won't do it. The modern secular liberal has no emergency brake at all. When the socialist talks about the ends justifying the means, they're not kidding. The means mean nothing to them. So political violence for them is totally justifiable because there's no moral compass, there's no emergency brake. And if they say, well, if we put shock troops in the street, we'll own the streets, scare the hell out of the conservatives, and we'll engage in a group of hecklers' vetoes where they won't even speak out, then how's that not a W for us? And in their perverse minds, that calculus makes perfect sense. It's their credo. It's how they live. You just have to understand it, or you'll always get your ass kicked by it.
So what they're doing is committing vandalism against the country. It's purely destructive. It's not creative at all. They're building nothing. They're only tearing things down. They pull down statues. They replace them with nothing except the homeless. So you ask, who would do that? Who commits vandalism? Where does that impulse come from, the rage? And of course, it comes from within. Happy people don't do that. Happy people sort of enjoy the flowers. They don't set them on fire. I do think the main difference between left and right in this country, it's not political, it's fundamental. It's one group is happy and the other group is truly miserable. They hate themselves and therefore you. So, by the way, people who hate themselves have no problem hating you. Be very afraid of people who hate themselves, like Kamala Harris. When that camera came on her at the Open, having spent my life on TV, I can see fear instantly. She was terrified. And she kind of pulled herself together, but she was afraid. How do you stay happy? You're on the happy team. not to get too personal, but like, what is your program for staying happy?
You know, I'm not a happy guy. No, I'm not. I love my wife a lot. I talk about her all the time in the show. She's become kind of a semi-celebrity just for my show and her like crazy date night stories. But you know, you ever read the book, The Natural? Not the movie. The movie's good, but the book, the Malamud book. And there's a line where Roy Hobbs' girlfriend says to Roy, you know, that we all live two lives, the one we learn from and the one we live after that. And that's a great line, but it's the second part she says that really matters. She says, the real path to happiness is through suffering. And she's right. Now, there's a lot of like biochemical reasons beyond the scope of this conversation that I won't bore you with about dopamine and all this other crap. But God gave you a really intricate happiness reward system. But the only way to access it so that it feels good, that really feels good, that it's deep, not liberal happiness, coke, blow, crack, drinking, heroin, whatever. I'm talking about true happiness where you feel you can die one day satisfied. Make no mistake and listen to what I'm telling you. This is the best advice you're ever going to get, not because it came from me, because someone gave it to me and it was genius. It's only through suffering. So people ask me, like, I joke about this cold plunge thing I have, which sucks in the morning, like nothing you've ever seen. You ever jump in 40-degree water at 6 in the morning, every morning, and just sit there and freeze? You know why I do it? Anyone have any idea? Because it sucks. That's why. That's why I do it, because it sucks. No, I'm serious. Yeah, there's cold shock proteins and all this stuff. Your brain is intricately wired by the intelligent creator to have to earn every ounce of happiness. My wife and I have a date night on Friday night. That's the one night a week me and her let loose. And you know what? I earn that. I'm up every morning, working out, jumping in the damn cold plunge. I'm 50 years old, I'm falling apart. I'm sitting there squatting, deadlifting, sweating. I'm done with my show. I'm up from 6. I bang out work from 10 to 3 p.m., right back to show prep the next day, right in the sauna. My wife comes, she doesn't do the cold plunge, she hates it, she only does something. She'll do the sauna. I sit in 190 degrees for 30 minutes. Why do I sit in it? Because it sucks. That's why. And you know what? When you're done with it, you ever listen to Goggins? David goes, you should be doing things that suck. And you know what? Your Friday nights with your wife are gonna be the greatest gift you ever got. Because, you know why? Because it doesn't suck. And you're so used to everything sucking. So am I happy? No. 6 days a week, I'm freaking miserable. But I am as happy as a pig in a shit pile on Friday night. And I love my life, and I'm not suicidal, and I love Jesus. I love my life. I love it, and you'll love it too. Do things that suck. Don't be a liberal. Seek out the fake stuff. Fake, phony stuff. That's what they do. That's why they hate themselves. Everything is fake and artificial. Praise for each other, stupid op-eds they write. So what do? They're all smoking dope and weed all day, be getting up at, who the hell gets up at 10 o'clock in the morning? 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm done with my day, 10 o'clock in the morning. Get your ass up. Sorry.
That is so awesome. I just love that.
Thanks, man.
So take us out with where you think the country is in a year and where you think the people in this room are in a year. You described your listeners not just as people who tune in, but as part of a movement. Where is that movement in a year?
You know, I'm worried about the country. I'm worried because having lived through, well, I was young with the Reagan Revolution. I don't want to pretend I was active in politics when I was 10. You know, I was born in 74. But I did live through it, and I became fascinated by it at the time. So having lived through that, and then having lived through Rudy Giuliani's New York, I have this expression, again, if you're listeners, you know what it is. And the question I ask everyone, I know the country is blessed and touched by the hand of God. I know it. I know evil's real, but I know good is real too. I do. I know God is real. Like, I feel it. I believe in it. It's an article of faith. I can't prove it to you. I can't pull a spreadsheet out of my butt and say, hey, here it is. But I'm telling you, this country's different. We should not have survived the Revolutionary War. The odds were 5,000 to 1 we were to win that against the British Empire. We were saved in the War of 1812. Some historians will tell you by a thunderstorm. I mean, we shouldn't have won that either. We should have never survived the Civil War and been more prosperous. We shot each other. It was gruesome. Then we survived the hippies. I mean, how the hell survives that? I mean, we should not be here. And it's not only, I mean, we've spent the country into oblivion. We have, you know, I hate the word literally, right? I can't stand it. But we have like non-figurative morons running this place. And not only are we still here, but we're the most powerful empire in the history of the known cosmos. Now, it's not even close. And you're like, so forgive me, but that is not by power of human beings alone. There's something divine about the United States. It's special. I mean it. That's a talking point, brothers. I'm not running for office. The problem I have is it's all cyclical. Like I said to you before, in an unintentional segue, like, think of the country as a collective organism. It has to do things that suck in order to enjoy the good times. And unfortunately, we do a lot of things that suck. So having lived through Giuliani's New York and Reagan's United States, I ask people all the time, do you think it's bad enough yet? Because we'll always, Churchill said it, right? Given all the opportunities in the end, the United States will always do the right thing, right? We'll always figure it out, but it has to get bad enough. And what makes me worry, Tucker, is I just don't think it's bad enough yet. I don't wish suffering on anyone, but I just told you I bring suffering on my own life because I know it makes the good times that much better. And I know in New York, I lived through. I think 2,500 people were murdered in the city. Do you have any idea how many? That's like Afghanistan, like under the Taliban. And everybody in New York was like, oh, this is it. They're definitely going to elect a Republican. They were finding 2-3 dead bodies a day. Giuliani runs. And I don't know if you guys remember what happened. Everybody's like, oh, he won. No, he didn't. No, he lost. Did you know that? And everybody was like, how? What? How the hell did he lost in a sliver to David Dinkins. They called him David
1989.
Dinkins. Yeah, he lost. No one in New York could believe it. They were like, what the hell has to happen? What has to happen? Well, I'll tell you what happened. 2,500 more people were murdered for 4 more years. People died, like actually died, brutal deaths. And then Giuliani ran again, and he won in a close race. And then he ran again 4 years later after cleaning the city up. I lived through it. You know what he won by in a city where the registration advantage was 10 to 1, Democrats or Republican? He won by 18 points. Go look it up. 18 points. So I'm optimistic because I know there's a divine hand of God touching this place. I'm just afraid we're not even close to bad enough yet. And anyone telling you, oh yeah, it's bad enough, people are gonna wake up. We had inflation, it was 9%. 9? Under Jimmy Carter, you had mortgage rates that were 15%. People have to suffer. It's not you. I know what you're thinking. You're out there thinking what me and Tucker are thinking. We want to just wake them up and go, you don't have to do this cold plunge thing. There's a way out of this. It's called like, don't get dead and don't be an asshole. Like, this isn't hard. Here's the general rule. Don't kill people in the street. Try to give as little money to the government as possible. Control your own health care. And like, don't cut my kids' genitals off when they're young. Like, this isn't hard. And they're like, no, they're like, but Dan, we gotta try it first. Okay, I can't stop you. You go ahead. I don't know. I don't think I know we'll save ourselves. I just don't know if we're there yet.
Next time we meet, I would like not in a live setting, but a very detailed description of your Friday night. But in the meantime, hey, Dan Bongino.
You guys hear my updates on Monday on the show, right? They're pretty crazy. Don't ever come out with me on Friday night. We've actually been like thrown out of bars and stuff. Kid Rock has that song, get tossed in a mix and thrown out of bars. I've actually lived that. Like, it wasn't my fault though, I promise. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.
I totally believe you. Dan Bongino, thank you.
God,
Amazing.
thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. You guys are that was a lot.
The big tech companies censor our content. I hate to tell you that it's still going on in 2024, but you know what they can't censor? Live events. And that's why we are hitting the road on a fall tour for the entire month of September, coast to coast. We will be in cities across the United States. We'll be in Kansas City with Megyn Kelly, Wichita with Charlie Kirk, Milwaukee with Larry Elder, Rosenberg, Texas with Jesse Kelly, Grand Rapids with Kid Rock, Hershey, Pennsylvania with JD Vance, Reading, Pennsylvania with Alex Jones, Fort Worth, Texas with Roseanne Barr, Greenville, South Carolina with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Sunrise, Florida with John Rich, Jacksonville, Florida with Donald Trump Jr. You can get tickets at tuckercarlson.com. Hope to see you there.